Assalamu alaikum, dear listeners and viewers. Welcome to another episode of Out of Sight, a show where we discuss and raise awareness issues regarding special needs and disabilities within our communities. I am your host, Zahra Faisal Al-Alawi, and with me today is Fatima Ali. Welcome.
Hi there. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I look forward to talking to you.
Thank you so much. Me too. So just a little introduction about Fatima. So Fatima, who is a full-time wheelchair user, is a recent law graduate from SOAS University of London. She is an aspiring barrister and is currently volunteering at a legal charity as a caseworker, helping those detained under immigration powers apply for bail. Fatima, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So shall we start off by you just explaining a bit about your condition?
Yeah, sure. So my condition's quite unique in the sense that it doesn't really have a name and it's very rare. So when I was diagnosed, my parents were told that there are about 20 people in the whole world that have the same condition as me. And yeah, and essentially the fluid around my spinal cord is more than the normal by a very small amount, and this compresses my spinal cord, which causes my the brain waves and signals that reach my hands and legs leave my brain strongly, but when they reach the compressed part, they become weaker. So they don't reach my arms and legs as strongly, which causes me to be wheelchair bound with limited hand and leg dexterity. So,
okay, so what is it like on a day-to-day basis if you, with regards to
that's a good question. I mean, I've adapted and I've created my own normal, so that's a very good question. Essentially, I face challenges every day with regards to my disability. And that's not saying challenges as in health-wise. I'm saying challenges with regards to accessibility. And maybe these are things that able-bodied people don't really realize or sometimes take for granted. But they're things that I sometimes have to point out to other people to say, well, actually, this is going to be a problem for me and I'm going to have to find a way to solve it, essentially, so it doesn't hinder me from experiencing the same things as able-bodied people.
We could already see your attitude is so positive. You're like, nothing is going to stop me. I love it.
Yeah.
So obviously your childhood and, all the experiences that you went through shaped, the person that you are today.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you tell us a bit about your childhood?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the eldest of two other siblings. Okay. So I've got two younger siblings. And essentially growing up, my parents didn't make me feel different. So when that is with regards to my siblings, with regards to other people, friends, in the community, going outside, I was never treated in a way that made me feel like I had a disability and I stood out from other people. And my parents were quite open with regards to talking about my disability, educating other people, advocating on my behalf for my rights. And I remember once we were in a shopping center, and the cashier, I was shopping with my mum, and the cashier, out of curiosity, just said to my mum, "Oh, poor thing, why is she in a wheelchair?" And my mum ended up explaining to her. So at the time, growing up, I was a bit annoyed. I was like, Mum, why are you telling everyone this? Like, this is something personal to me. And in a way, she said to me that, it's nothing to be ashamed of. People are going to be curious, and it's up to us to educate them with regards to how to view disabilities, and explain to them what I have and that it's nothing bad in that sense.
I just pick up what you said, that she said poor thing. So how do you feel when someone says that?
So unfortunately, it's something that I hear quite often. And it's quite funny because people usually, when they ask about, what's wrong with me, if I've got someone accompanying me, they usually go to that person rather than come to me. So if it's my mum, if it's a carer that's out with me, it's usually, oh, you know, poor thing, what's wrong with her?
They address the person
They
with you,
address
not
the
you.
not me at all.
That's
And that's even with like if I need help. So if they ask like, oh, does she need help? Is she gonna be okay? So they don't address
that's
me.
unusual though.
Yeah, I mean, I mean the thing is, our perception of
Yeah.
disabled people within society is that, you know, disabled people, especially people who have physical disabilities, that where you can see. So I
Yeah.
depend on a wheelchair. Um, Once I'm seen by that person, I'm essentially automatically stereotyped as, you know, she's going to have difficulty communicating.
Doesn't
She might not
understand.
be that bright. So instead of communicating with them directly, if they're accompanied by someone, we'll talk to them. And then we usually get the occasional comment, oh, you know, it's so sad, poor thing, but she looks good, she looks pretty, you know, like khataya, why is she disabled, right?
Yeah.
And it's that stereotype again
Yeah.
of, you know, disabled people shouldn't be, you
Shouldn't
know,
look good.
shouldn't look
Yeah.
good, they should not dress well, they should, you know, just essentially be quite different from able-bodied people in society. So yeah, so my parents from a young age taught me to be proud of who I am, to you know, encompass my disability to the fullest, and to essentially represent.
I love
Yeah,
that. Your
so
parents were so positive.
they were. Yeah, yeah.
And
So,
we just met your mom as well backstage, and she's so lovely. It
yeah.
was so nice meeting her.
She's very, very supportive. So
Oh,
yeah, I'm very, very lucky to have them on my
alhamdulillah.
side. Yeah.
So we were speaking about your experiences, but obviously you did go through challenges as well.
Yeah.
What were some of the difficulties that you remember from childhood?
So I was bullied in primary school with just the way that I used to sometimes pick my water bottle up and things like that. It's quite different from able-bodied people, and children essentially sometimes are quite curious.
Yeah.
But I did face the occasional bullying, and in that sense, it took quite an effect on me. But I saw how my parents dealt with it and how they ended up going to the school and you know, advocating for me and saying that this was not correct.
So that taught you then how to advocate for yourself.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So I essentially learned from them. I learned how to be strong,
Yeah.
and how to fight for myself, essentially. So it was always that, and even during high school. Yeah, so it's just quite a lot of challenges of the way people see you, how they perceive you, especially within the Muslim community. It's usually, if you're disabled, you really shouldn't, you know, be out and about. I had this once.
Yeah.
I had this once in high school. We were at an open evening,
Yeah.
and we had the corridor was quite crowded, and we were all just walking
Yeah.
to leave the building.
Yeah.
And there was an Iraqi mother with her child, and she said something along the lines of, like, it's so crowded. Why is this disabled person here? Like, why did they bring her here? And in that sense, I was
crazy.
quite shocked.
Crazy.
So I didn't,
Can't believe
you
it.
know, I was at the time, I think 13, 14. So I was quite shocked. So I didn't know how to respond. And when I told my mum afterwards, she was understandably quite frustrated.
Yeah.
And she wanted to speak to her, but we didn't end up finding her. But it's that kind of these little kind of comments, the small comments you see, the way people like patronize you, may like talk to you in a condescending way. It's taken an effect on me because I've always had to make sure that I'm always prepared. So with the way I talk, with the way I dress, with the way I present myself. Usually when someone approaches me, it's usually, oh, hi, or like sometimes they'll try to speak to me in a way that they won't think I'm difficult to understand, so I can't understand them, and I won't be able to reply back. And then essentially once I start talking to them, they will then change their perception of me. But it's that essentially that first kind of interaction where you can see the stereotypes
Yeah.
and the stigma around disability.
That must make you so resilient. Like, you've learned how to react and deal with that.
Definitely.
And do you feel like it has affected your self-esteem?
Well, this goes back to like having a support system and having my family.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to have my cousins as well. And I think my disability in a way has made me become, or my upbringing with my disability has kind of made me more confident.
I love that, yeah.
So
it's made you stronger.
It's made me stronger.
Yeah.
So we can view disability sometimes in a quite negative way.
Yeah.
But sometimes, well, the way I view it,
Yeah.
I don't view it as it being a bad thing. Yeah, it might hinder me from doing certain things. And I might have to find different ways of doing certain activities. But in a sense, it's made me stronger.
I love the way that you're so positive.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you're positive, that rubs off on others.
Yeah.
Right? Have you felt that, you know? And it like, yeah, it has
I
ripple
usually
effect,
get the comment of, well, you look so happy. You're always happy. Why are you always happy? And
oh my God.
it's that idea of I'm a normal person. I can sometimes have days where I'm depressed and upset.
Yeah.
But in general, I choose to see the positive side of things. And, you know, that way life just keeps on moving.
I love that. And you know, there's no doubt that your parents have had an effect on you.
Definitely. Yeah,
that has made you positive.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Because we know that, you know, we don't see many wheelchair users, for example, we were saying in mosques and or centres.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't mean that they don't exist. There are many wheelchair users, but they just don't come. Right?
So yeah, so I don't. I've stopped going simply because of the lack of accessibility, and also the way I'm treated. So I'm not. I don't find myself kind of being treated as an equal, being viewed as an equal.
And I feel like, can I just make a point? So I'm part of Amanati, and it's a non-profit organisation where we're trying to raise awareness, special needs and disabilities, and support families. And we did some research, and we found that what you're saying, basically, that there's two kind of barriers. There's the social barriers, and there's the physical barriers. So physical barriers are like things like, no step-free access, you know, it's difficult to use the toilet, for example, no disabled parking, and so on. But also social barriers, and sometimes they are even more difficult, I feel like. And social barriers are things like discrimination, stigma, and discrimination can be both subtle and overt. So overt discrimination might be someone like that lady that you spoke about, telling you to leave, like, why is she here, out loud? But subtle discrimination might be something like just staring at you, and that makes you feel uncomfortable. Like, why are you staring?
I mean, I'm used to being stared at, whether I'm in a mosque or whether I'm on the tube or whether, you know, in general, and I've just learnt to live with that because people are inherently curious, and you know, if they're not confident enough to ask questions, then, you know, they're going to stare, and they would want to understand more about the situation, especially if they haven't been exposed to other disabled people.
So do you feel like that the social stigma is kind of, does it have a greater effect on you in terms of like mosques and centres?
So that's the problem. So even within the Muslim and Iraqi community, I've seen that a lot of people kind of don't view you as an equal. So, you know, we've got the laws that say I should be treated as an equal. I am an equal to any able-bodied person. You know, in the eyes of God, we're all equals. But unfortunately, within the community and within our society, disability isn't viewed as a positive thing. So I usually, you know, get the comments of, oh, like, do you go to a special needs school? Outright, just the first question. Right? And things like that. It's like, I have nothing against special needs schools. The people who need to go to it or want to go to it, that's totally fine. But it's that idea of, because you're disabled, you need to be excluded from society, right? So you need to be
in a separate environment.
You can't. I've had people who work in the council, who work in schools, say to me, wouldn't you feel more comfortable in a special needs school where everyone else looks like you? And I'm like, if we're going to continue to exclude disabled people from the rest of society, disability is never going to be normalized.
Yeah.
So we're never gonna be able to kind of see a disabled person and just think of them as any other person living their lives, capable of doing anything, capable of education, capable of having a family, capable of living their life, going on holidays.
And we're going to get to this issue.
Yeah.
We're going to get to this issue of education in a bit as well. I'm excited for that. But I feel like, going back to the issue of mosques and our centres, once we tackle the social stigma and the taboo that's around disability, it becomes easier to overcome the physical barriers. Because then they're going to start putting things in place. The more people that talk about it, the more it's actually going to be put into place, right?
Yeah. So the more that we talk to people, especially within our community, about disabilities and how they're nothing, it's not a bad thing. You hear the aunties in the community, I'd like to say, when they talk, and it's like, oh, did you hear blah blah, poor thing, she has a disabled daughter, or poor thing, she's got someone in a wheelchair. Or even recently, I know someone who's a full-time wheelchair user who got married. And it was this massive thing. People were making a big deal out of it. Like, oh my God, do you know who got married?
Really?
Blah, blah. She's in a wheelchair. Yeah, you know that. And I was like, that shouldn't be something that is a surprise to anyone. We do live our lives. We have the right to do all of those things. We shouldn't be looked down upon.
Of course.
But the problem is, we are seen less than. And whether people like to admit it or not, within our community, disabled people are just not treated the same as able-bodied people. 100%, we're expected less of. We're not, we're not seen as people, who can just live normal lives, study, work, and all of those things. And it's just, sometimes it's quite disheartening. Because we're left to, so disabled people kind of have to bear the responsibility of, educating able-bodied people about, disabilities. We live normal lives as well. It's fine. It's not a problem. We're happy. So sometimes it is. But once we work on changing people's minds, and I think I said this to you before, if we were viewed as equal members of society, then all our mosques and all our buildings would have already been accessible and we wouldn't have faced that problem, right?
So true.
So you see that there is a gap and we need to tackle that.
So before we move on from childhood, do you have any final words about parenting and, because we did speak about this topic a bit before, right? And
we did. So essentially, I think it was along the lines of so for example, when children are curious and they ask their parents, I'm a strong believer of children often imitate what their parents, so they see what their parents do, they see how their parents act and interact, and they essentially follow in their footsteps. I've seen a lot of children who have spoken to me in a condescending and patronizing way, who seem to be, they don't seem to realize that disabled people are the same as able-bodied people, but we sometimes just need to depend on other things a bit more.
And you have to wonder why. Why are they like
that? Right. So I look at my siblings and the way they've grown up with me. They've been exposed to, to me, my wheelchair, and essentially the attitude my parents have towards disabled people and disabilities. And I strongly believe that we should break the cycle of viewing disability in a negative manner and then passing that on to our children, because indirectly they're gonna follow that whether you explain it to them or not, because they're gonna view how you're acting right in society, the way you talk about disabled people. They're inherently gonna just have those ideas and do basically the same stereotypes that have the same stereotypes.
Okay, so taking, that thought, if I was with my son, for example, and, we saw you, for example, and we didn't know you, and he pointed you out because, you know, children are
Yeah.
curious, they'll do that. Knowing, yeah, he would literally,
Yeah.
he would be asking questions.
Yep.
How should the mother or father react? What would, you know, you like me to say, for example?
So I think in the first sense, I would have liked the parent to explain to their child that, you know, this person is a disabled person. They might not be able to walk. So, for example, if they pointed at me and I've got a wheelchair, you know, why can't they walk? You know, they'd say maybe they've got a medical condition that prevents them from walking, and they essentially rely on a wheelchair to help them walk, like you and me.
Yeah.
And essentially add that positive spin that says, but they're the same as you and me. They live normal lives.
Yeah.
They may face challenges because that's just the aspect of life with a person with a disability. And essentially that we should not treat them any differently. Having that positive spin, and also bearing in mind that you don't know that maybe, you know, anything can happen in life. Someone can wake up one day and have it, you know, not be able to walk.
Yeah.
And they might have to rely on a wheelchair, right? And to some people, that might be a massive change. They've never been exposed to something like that. But if we talk to our children about disabled people in the normal sense, it wouldn't be as significant of a problem.
Because I was having this discussion with my friend last time as well, and she was saying how sometimes parents, when a child points, you know, a disability out, they're like, shh, 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 don't say anything. So it's like, I feel like
it's the unspoken.
That makes it a taboo. Like,
it does. Like, oh, don't speak about it. Don't point. I mean, pointing. Maybe don't point, but in a sense, like, don't look at them. Don't talk to them. Don't talk to them. They might essentially not understand you. They might not be able to speak to you. You know, they're like,
creating those stereotypes.
You know, like, oh, poor thing. They live difficult lives. That kind of thing. It all adds that negative stigma around disability, which is something that we should technically be removing from society.
I love it. So it starts with the next generation.
I know, exactly, and that's why I say. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on now to adult life. So what is life like? That's a bit of a broad question, but we know that once you turn 18, you become an adult, right? And many people don't know this, but once you become when you turn 18, a lot of the services or support that you used to receive is taken away from you, right? Okay, so can you tell us a bit about that? Because I'm interested.
So so when you turn 18 as a disabled person, up until you turn 18, you're supported by pediatricians, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, social workers. At school, if you have a disability, you would have an educational health plan in place. And that would essentially be if you have any needs that need to be met, that would be provided for. So, for example, I had a teaching assistant with me throughout the day. So she'd be with me in my classes. She'd help me go to the bathroom if I needed to. She'd help me during lunch to take out my food. And things like that. And the thing that I faced that I didn't know at the time was that once you turn 18, you're left on your own. So, for example, I was discharged from the pediatrician clinic, understandably, because I'm no longer a child. But I was told, okay, if you have any more problems, your GP is right there, you can go to them. I used to have regular physio. I used to have a physio that was assigned to me. That was no longer there. So if you wanted physio, you'd have to go and have, a 6-week slot, I think, where you'd have physio, and then after that, that's done.
Is there a long waiting time for that as well?
Oh, yeah. The waiting time's ridiculous as well. And essentially, I moved on to higher education, and I went into university. And I needed the same support that I was getting when I was at school. So I needed someone to be with me, to help me with things physically. And I didn't know who to turn to. Because I asked my school, my sixth form at the time. They had no idea. I asked my university. They had no idea. And I spoke to my council. And they said, well, you know, we haven't faced something like that before. I had the
surprising.
comment of, well, you're the first person in a wheelchair to go to university in Brent, so this is a grey area.
Whoa.
Right?
Whoa.
And I was like, we're in the 21st century. I'd like to believe more disabled people have managed to access higher education.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoa, yeah.
So it was this whole conversation of who do I go to,
Yeah.
who do I speak to get what I need to be able to, you know, go into university and achieve my potential.
Yeah.
Because I knew I could do it with the right support.
Yeah.
And I had to face this battle of fighting for my rights,
Yeah.
getting someone to believe that
Yeah.
I needed the support that I needed.
That's crazy. You had to make someone. You had to get them to believe.
Right?
Like
It's that whole idea of
Yeah.
I needed to, I was speaking to the social worker at the time,
Yeah.
and I was like, I need someone to be with me
Yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
you know, during transport,
Yeah.
during the day. And I'd get some like comments like, well, if you need that much support, then you should just stay at home. And I was like, but that shouldn't be the case, right?
Yeah.
I should be provided with the support that I need to be able to go to university, get a degree, and essentially aim for a career.
You have to go through all of this just to demand a basic right of education.
Right, just to demand the basic right of education. But in their eyes, it's like, this is such a big achievement that you're a disabled person and you're going to university. And the council had this idea of, well, once you finish high school and you've got accepted into university, you're no longer disabled and you don't need anything. So I had to continuously remind them that just because I'm going to university doesn't mean I'm out of my wheelchair and I've started walking,
God.
you know.
Oh my God, yeah.
I still have the disability.
Yeah.
I need the support that I was provided
Okay.
before. Nothing's changed.
Okay, so you know, we mentioned that you went to SOAS
Yeah.
and you recently graduated. Well done.
Thank you.
What year? When did you graduate?
2021.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about the process of actually, you know, getting into the uni and what it was like. Because I know there was a bit of difficulty.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a bit about that. Tell us the story.
So when
Yeah.
I got accepted into university, I gave them a call, and
Yeah.
that was before I got my results.
Okay.
To essentially tell them, I've already mentioned in my application and my personal statement my disability. And I essentially told them when I'm coming in, I'm going to need to have equipment provided, and you're going to have to provide that equipment because going into higher education with a disability, support is divided into within 3 institutions.
Okay.
So any equipment you need with regards to studying, so a computer, softwares, for example, speaking to the computer and it writes for you, printers, tables, everything like that, and also special needs equipment. For example, I use a hoist, so a mobile hoist or a ceiling hoist, and essentially it's a machine that lifts you from your chair and transfers you to another place. So, for example, I use it in the bathroom, so it lifts me from my chair, takes me onto the toilet, and then does the same thing back to my chair. And what happened was, I was telling the university, you know, this is what needs to be provided. And they just told me, well, if you get your results, then we'll talk about it. Bearing in mind that by the time you get your results, the time you start, so Freshers Week, that is like 3-4 weeks maybe. And that's not enough time to make sure that, you know, the toilets are fully accessible for me to use. Everything's been provided for.
They kind of just brushed it aside. They
like just brushed it aside. And I was like, okay. So they, in a sense, underestimated how much that they were going to have to provide. And once I got my results and I accepted their offer, I was like, okay.
Well, now that's surprising that they didn't know. Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I get surprised quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So I called them and I was like, okay, I'm gonna come in. I need to have a meeting with the disability office. And I spoke to them, and they were like, well, we need to check our toilets and see how big they are, even the disabled ones. And they were
to check if they can fit a ceiling hoist?
check if I can fit in it with a mobile hoist at the time.
Okay.
And I got the email of, well, our toilets are not big enough. And for those who know, SOAS is beside UCL. And our toilets are not big enough. And if you need to go to a toilet, there's a toilet in one of the UCL buildings that they'll be happy to provide. And it's like a 15-minute walk.
Every time you want to go to the toilet, you have to Go 15 minutes.
15-minute walk to UCL to use the bathroom.
And then go back again to...
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that was their solution.
So, yeah, that was the solution that they provided.
Okay.
I think I remember at the time I was sat with my cousin and I got this email and I was like, going to university is quite scary for anyone, right? And it's a big change. And I got this email and I was like, I'm so confused. Like, how is this a solution? Right? And then, you know, she helped me write this email to the director to essentially, you know, state that this wasn't just not good enough. I demand more and I should be given more.
I love the way that you're always like,
you know, like the rights are there, you know, you just have to
but the sadly not everyone is like that.
That's the thing. That's the thing. And and eventually they provided me with the ceiling hoist that I needed and all the equipment. And then I was just faced with the problem of trying to get the support that I needed.
Okay, so what kind of support did you need? Can you explain that?
So I needed someone to come with me to university.
Okay.
So the disability student allowance usually provides you with transport and other equipment that you would need at home to study. And I needed someone to come with me via transport, so in the taxi. Okay. I needed someone to provide help me, for example, take my things out of my bag. To get my food out from my bag.
So this is called like personal support?
This is personal care, essentially.
Care. Okay.
So help me go to the bathroom. If I want to buy something, help me buy something from outside. Because I can't go into my purse and just take out my money because I have limited. I'm limited in that way. So essentially, these were all things that I had to list, and to a social worker.
You had to like explain yourself.
I just had to explain multiple times about what I needed. I needed to, and the problem is, so there are good social workers that will advocate for your needs, and there are social workers that just either don't believe you, either think you're asking for too much, or they just know that their managers are just not going to provide you with that support.
So they just don't bother.
And I was faced with comments like, well, if you really need... I got asked, how many times do you need to go to the toilet in a day? And I was like, I don't know. Do you know how many times you need to go to the toilet a day? If you know, that's good for you. But I can't give you a number. For example, I'll tell you 3, and then I needed to go 4 times a day. What's going to happen then? And essentially, it was this battle where I had to go and speak with one of the managers, and I had comments like, well, what you're asking for. So I was essentially asking for a 35-hour package, and what you're asking for is similar to a package that we would give to someone with a feeding tube, and you essentially don't have that. You can talk. You can, you know, move around, use an electrical wheelchair. You don't need that support that you need, that you're asking for. You should just be a bit more independent. And in a way, I was like, I don't enjoy having someone following me around all day. I don't enjoy asking for the things that I need to be done. So if I'm walking down the street and I drop my phone or something falls from my hand, they would expect me to rely on someone from the public, right, to come and help me.
That's crazy,
Simple things like opening doors. You know, not all doors are automatic, especially like university buildings. I would need someone to open the door, press the lift buttons, because I can't do those things. And they just weren't understanding that. So essentially, after a lot of advocating, I finally managed to get the support that I needed. But this was 7 months in my university degree. So up until that time, my mum used to come with me every day, all the time. And she's my main carer at home as well. So having her full time, you know, I'm very grateful for her support and her help. But she shouldn't have, you know, been put in a situation where she would have been expected to do something
Honestly,
like that.
Your mom is so amazing.
So it's that. The support is there. We just need to know how to advocate for it. And the system is wrong. And we need to work on ways to change it, because it's constantly people having to prove their disabilities, which, okay, some people do need to prove. But once we demand the support that we need, it's something that we should just be given, because we don't kind of ask for support for the fun of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We don't need support because we enjoy having,
Yeah.
you know, I don't enjoy having someone following me around all day.
Yeah.
But it's something that I need. It's
Yeah.
something that's going to allow me to feel independent.
Yeah.
And in a way, having my mum come with me, it was great to have my mum. I get along with her very well, and I love her to bits.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
You're going to feel bad about that.
I felt bad about it, and at the same time, you know, all throughout school, I felt I was dependent, but at the same time independent. So I was dependent on the teaching assistant that was with me, but I was independent from my parents, right? And I felt like I went back a step when I had my mum come with me, because I felt like I was being dependent on them all the time, right? And so essentially, the question of just, I don't know how many people in my situation who have been told no and just haven't decided to push for their rights.
I'm sure.
You know, I've spoken to social workers about that. And I'm persistent, and I do fight for what I want for.
Wow. Yeah. I find that very inspirational, actually, because
and
in life in general, like, I feel like, I don't know, I'm someone that gives up easily, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot to learn from that. Like,
right.
Yeah,
so essentially, people don't always have the you know, the persistence to go on, and it was difficult. You know, it was taking a toll on me mentally. Not being provided the support you need, I felt very insecure. I developed anxiety because of it. I ended up going to hospital because of it. You know, it's just all of those things that people don't take into account.
And I feel like that's something that people don't talk about, the effect on your mental health.
Yeah.
Right? And not just the disabled individual, but also their direct family members that are also affected by it.
My whole family were going through it with me, essentially. Yeah. So it was quite difficult.
How did it, like, what part of it affected your mental health, do you think? The fact that they kept rejecting you, the fact that you had to...
The fact that I kept getting rejected, and the fact that this thing that the support that I was dependent on, and that I viewed myself to be kind of, this was my way to be independent, I'll be able to go to university, I'll be able to do all of those, was taken away from me. So I was kind of left in a situation where I was like, oh my God, if I'm not supported in that way, I'm not going to be able to achieve everything, because as much as my parents are there to support me, and, you know, my cousins and my family and my friends are all there, I would like to feel some sort of independence, right? Yeah. And the fact that you are not provided with that, and that can be taken away very easily from me, caused me to be very anxious and insecure, because I was like, I need the support to kind of live the life that I want to live. If I don't have that support, I'm not going to be able to live the life I want to live.
Yeah.
So it was just that equation, and I was kept being rejected, and I just couldn't see a way out of it. But eventually, when I was, you know, you just continue being
so resilient.
I know.
And strong.
Yeah. So it is difficult, and it requires, you know, a lot of patience and resilience. But I would just say to any disabled people out there, do not take no for an answer.
I love it.
You know, you should, you know, a lot of people should just fight for their rights, and demand more, essentially. Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about, you know, what you're doing now and your aspirations and dreams for the future. So what are you doing? Yeah,
so currently I'm volunteering at a legal charity. And I'm a volunteer caseworker. We essentially work with people who are detained under immigration powers. I don't know if you've seen in the news, there's quite a lot of things happening with regards to immigration and asylum seekers coming in, and planes to Rwanda and things like that. So we help people apply for bail, because people are detained under immigration powers, and essentially they've got a right to apply for bail. And in the UK, you can be detained for as long as they want. Essentially, there's no cap. We're the only country in Europe that can do that. And we work on cases where we help them apply for bail and get them released. so that they can have better access to legal resources.
Do you feel like your experiences with disability has kind of influenced you, or like made you more interested in fighting for humanitarian causes or social justice?
Definitely. And you know, after this, I want to complete the bar course to become a barrister. And I think part of that is kind of my advocacy skills that I've improved through advocating for myself, kind of really influence that, and want me to, and just essentially push me to utilize those advocacy skills for other people who might be vulnerable, who, you know, might not know what their rights are.
So what is that journey like to become a barrister? Because I don't know much about.
So after I graduated, I essentially took a year. I'm on it now, and I'm going to take another year to improve just my work experience skills. Okay. So the more experience you get, the better.
I'm sorry, just to stop you there. We were talking about before about taking the train. So you take the train to.
Yeah. So I do take the train. I was telling you before we started that I did once go into to get my wheelchair fixed. Yeah. And I was telling them it was quite slow, you know, and there needed to be a solution because I go on the tube to work and things like that. And the engineer essentially, who his job is to work with people who are disabled. Okay. He's just said to me, "Oh my God, like, you use the tube?" And I was like, "Yeah, to go to work." And he goes, "You're so brave to use the tube. Like, not a lot of disabled people use the tube." And I was like, "Thank you, but I'm not brave. This is just something that, you know, disabled people can do. The support is there.
And should do,
And should do. The support is there. They just need to be encouraged to be able to take that step, essentially." So,
So you were saying that the journey to get to become a barrister, you were saying is...
So I've taken a few years to do experience. Okay. And then after that, you have to... study one more year, and that's called the bar training course, I like to say. And essentially that's an extra year where you learn advocacy skills. You, I think, get to specialize in a way. Study, for example, if I want to do immigration law, so I want to focus on that more. And after that, you get called to the bar. So, and then you can start practicing as a barrister. Okay. I want to do my master's along with that as well. So it's a journey, and then it's going to take a bit of time. Yeah. But I think with every step of the way, so as I progress, it's just repeating the same thing.
Do you feel like
advocating for your rights?
What approach do you take? Do you try and just go with the flow, or like do you always think about how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that?
I overthink.
Do you
quite a lot? Yeah, I'm very guilty of that. And at the same time, I like to plan. Yeah. So I like to have a plan in place and make sure that everything's going to go smoothly. Yeah. So, like, for example, when I start, you know, everything's there. Yeah. So even when I started my volunteering placement, I met with the director beforehand to have a conversation with her about everything that needed to be in place. Yeah. Because if I don't do that, then the opposite person is not going to know what I need. So I need to explicitly say, this is what I need, this is what needs to be done, and can you provide that? Yeah. So essentially it's notifying the right people of where you want to go next and your next steps, and hoping that by the time, you know, the stop line begins, you know, you've got the right people there to kind of provide the support for you, which usually isn't there, and you have to just start from scratch and ask a lot of people to provide you with the things that you need. So it's not a continuous journey. So I've got the support that I need now, but once I start university, it might change and I might need to start all over again. But it's something I'm willing to do to get where I want to be. So it's quite exciting.
And a beautiful part of it is just having tawakkul that Allah will put everything in place, trust in Allah.
Definitely.
And you're doing your part. So we were talking about this before as well, and it was the difference between how you feel like UK society is compared to, you know, the Muslim community or communities. Would you like to speak a bit about that?
So I was I was telling you that it was, I experienced like the disability stereotypes and stigma within both communities, so UK society and Muslim Iraqi community.
Yeah.
But in a way,
Yeah.
I face less of it when I'm in a British / UK society,
Yeah.
rather than the Iraqi Muslim
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
And essentially, within both,
Yeah.
I get treated differently.
Okay.
But within the UK society
Yeah.
in general, I feel like I'm seen as less different than in a Muslim / Iraqi community.
Which is, it shouldn't be like that
It
at all.
shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
But in a way, so growing up, I didn't have a lot of Iraqi Arab friends, Muslim friends.
Why do you think that is?
Simply because I was viewed very differently. So they
actually
didn't like
felt-
hanging out with me.
Yeah.
They wouldn't
Wow.
speak to me.
Well, it's just like your family, friends kind of thing. Like
So
community.
family, friends,
Yeah.
people at school,
Even at school, yeah.
high school, all of those things. In university, at the same, SOAS is quite has a good Muslim community in there as well. But I didn't come out with a lot of Muslim or Iraqi friends, and
That's so sad. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I do have a good bunch of friends who are non-Muslim, and they're very, very supportive. But it is quite sad in a way to see that, within your own community, you're seen as less than and you're treated differently.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's kind of made me not withdraw, but it's essentially there's a lot of work to be done. And I felt growing up that it was just quite difficult to do all of that alone, right? So I was like, if this community is not going to accept me for who I am, and it's not going to treat me like an equal, that's fine. I will find other people who will do that, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like being Muslim and being Iraqi, that's just part of me,
Yeah.
right? So it's quite sad,
Yeah.
and I'd like that to change for the future.
Yeah.
And it's something that we just need to work on. Yeah.
So, was you going to say something before that? I cut you off.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. So we're almost coming to an end.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk about one last thing, and that is because we spoke about the Muslim community, and this is part of why we're doing shows like this, is to raise awareness, to educate people, and to get people to be more understanding.
Yep.
Because I feel like when people are more understanding, that's when they're going to be more accepting, more welcoming, and then we're going to start making those changes, reducing those physical barriers. So just to give us an idea of, you saying you don't really attend majalis or mosques and centers, give us an idea of what it's like if you're if you want to go to one. What is the challenge? Like, I want to picture it. I want to imagine, like,
wheelchair accessibility is the first one.
Yeah.
So
The obvious one, yeah.
a lot of steps. Even places that
Many
say
centres
that
don't have.
that they are flat and they are accessible, there's usually a step.
You've had people say that, or this center is thing, and you've went
Well,
and you couldn't.
it's word of mouth, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you ask people that who've been, are there any steps? Are there any stairs? And they're like, no, it's flat. And then you turn up and there's this big step, and you're
No
like,
one
well,
realizes that.
I'm here now, so what do I do, right? And it's this thing of like having to be supported to get in, and having to have your chair lifted or something like that. And that I don't feel comfortable having that done.
Many people don't like that. Yeah.
So essentially, inaccessibility is the big one.
Because I feel like with this, just having one step makes all the difference, and you don't realize it. You're like, no, they have a ramp, but then they have that one step that you. It's like
So it's inaccessibility is one. Not being seen or treated as an equal is another one.
Yeah,
and
that's the big one.
That is the big one, and that needs a lot of work. The more we can raise awareness, especially within events like those, with regards to the accessibility, and even talking about disability, talking about discrimination, talking about the thoughts and stigma around disability.
So
and the
like
ones that are
having
present.
things like workshops and
Yeah.
yeah,
Having
doing
things
like
like
that would really help.
workshops,
Yeah.
having people talk about, what they've seen. Because if all you've seen on TV is,
Oh yeah. We were talking about this.
yeah, disabled
Yeah.
people, in sci-fi movies
Yeah.
being the villains.
Yeah.
There is a movie where like this disabled person just thought he was too much of a burden to live life.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, all of those things. And you've never been exposed to disabled
You're
people
gonna have
before.
stereotypes. Yeah.
You're going to have stereotypes because your community is telling you they are less than, they suffer, they're not living happy lives.
Yeah.
It's all of that. And
Yeah.
essentially, that is one major thing that needs to change.
And also with regards to the physical accessibility, I remember you mentioning doors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you don't think about that, but like it's not easy.
They're just
to
things
open.
that able-bodied people take for granted
Yeah.
that we won't technically be able to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So so what other things? Let's think about what other things that can be done, because I feel like raising awareness through shows like this is so important.
Yeah.
Having workshops, we said. I feel like another issue as well is having things like, thinking about other disabilities as well. Things like BSL interpreters, right?
Yeah.
Or children with, for example, autism.
Yep.
Because I have many friends who have autistic children, and they're not able to bring their children because their children get told off if they're trying, for being naughty, for running around, when it's something that they can't help.
Yeah.
So we need to create things like, having, maybe like a special room, a separate room for maybe, children to roam around in if they want. And like we were talking about in the beginning about, it starts with the children, right?
It really does.
So working on the next generation, just like we would have workshops for adults, we could also do the same thing for...
I mean, I feel like children on their own, they don't have the biases that we kind of inflict on them.
So yeah, you were saying
right?
it's the parents and the adults around them, right?
So essentially, they might be impacted by their parents, and having workshops for them would be really good. But at the same time, our main priority should be educating able-bodied parents and the older generation within our society.
Yeah.
To just kind of break down those stereotypes that they've got about disabled people. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I've learned so much. Seriously. It's been really nice having this conversation.
Yeah, it has been.
Do you... And I just, one last thing, and remember you were mentioning before, the importance of having a support system.
Yeah.
Could you just say final comments on that?
So I'm very grateful to have a very, very strong
Let's do
support.
shout-outs
I know.
to all the people who are watching.
So I'm very grateful to have a very strong support system, whether that be my family, my extended family, and my friends, who constantly kind of see where I've been, what I'm doing, help me, advocate for my rights, constantly support me in what I want to do and where I want to go. Having that is a major it's
having that emotional support, right?
So it's that emotional support. It's having someone be there for you, knowing that you can rely on someone to just tell them what you're going through. They don't even have to be disabled to understand. It's just saying, can you believe it? Like, this is what someone said to me. This is what I thought, or I can't go to this place because of this and that. It's things like that that will allow you to kind of have the strength to go on. Having a support system is just, it's incredible.
Alhamdulillah. And the reality is that many children with disabilities don't grow up with that emotional support, with that support system. And that's why we don't see them. That's why they're not advocating for their rights.
That's the problem.
And as you were saying, we need that,
Because if they see their family, like their parents are ashamed of them or don't talk about them, they see their parents settling with what they're being given, and they see them being excluded from society. How are we going to, build that kind of confidence and that strength if we're constantly breaking them down, right? And excluding them and shunning them from society. So it's having that support,
Yeah.
which builds confidence, which then allows you to advocate for your rights and your needs and what you want to do.
And I feel like once, you know, you as a disabled individual start to advocate for your rights and you're confident and you're positive, that has an effect, ripple effect on others.
Yeah.
Right? And other people are like, yeah, we need to. Whereas if you're at home and not doing anything and you don't want to do anything, then no.
I recently traveled with one of my Arab friends, a family friend, and she was telling me, she was like, I've learned so much from traveling with you, because I've now, like, she was like, even in my daily life, like when I go out of a station and I see that it's not accessible, I'm like, why is this place not, like, why doesn't it have lift, or why is it not accessible? And she was like, you know, a lot of people were telling her, like, are you sure you want to travel with Fatima?